Hey everybody. So today I've got an article regarding the peopling of a certain site. This time Madagascar. There's this flightless bird, a giant flightless bird, probably the biggest one ever, called the elephant bird. And it basically looked like a giant ostrich. It was 500 kilograms, and they've been written about extensively throughout history. I think Marco Polo wrote about it in the Arabian Nights story. Sinbad the Sailor, they talked about a version of the elephant bird called the rook, or the ROC, the rock rook. So this bird is not new in terms of human knowledge, but it originated in Madagascar, and they found these bird bones in this bone pit. It's like this marshy area in Madagascar, as well as there are other bones that they already had in the record in the museum, and they analyzed both, and they found that there were butcher scars, anthropogenic butcher scars, meaning that there were people who hunted and killed these animals, and they radiocarbon dated the organic material, and they got 10,000 plus years ago, basically at the turn of the last ice age. So it set the archaeological record of human activity in Madagascar back 6,000 years. Because before they had the same evidence in the archaeological record, but instead of it being the giant flightless bird, the elephant bird, it was lemurs and small monkeys and smaller fauna that had these same butcher marks. And those were dated to about 2,400 to 4,000 years ago. So this really opens up a whole new can of worms and a whole new line of inquiry regarding where these people came from, why they came there, and who were they, because they didn't have genetic... Their genetics are extinct. They don't exist today in today's human genome. So these people just came out of nowhere at the turn of the last ice age. So again, this narrative kind of is repeating itself. Again, Göbekli Tepe, the Younger Dryas, the Clovis people, the mysterious sudden disappearance of Clovis people, all happened around this time. So I think this article really does point to something happening at that date, and it was universal. All over Earth, something cataclysmic must have happened. And this is just another piece of the puzzle here. So the article... this is from the Zoological Society of London, which is I think a volunteer group that's funded by donors. The article reads, ancient bird bones redate human activity in Madagascar by 6,000 years. Humans arrived on the tropical island of Madagascar more than 6,000 years earlier than previously thought. A team of scientists led by the international conservation charity ZSL. They show cut marks and depression fractures consistent with hunting and butchery by prehistoric humans. And these people, they were either from East Africa or Australasia, basically Australia, around there. So that's a really diverse group of people already, supposedly. I mean, these were the people who had come there. But apparently there's another group of people that were even older than they were who came in. And those were the people I was talking about earlier who didn't have a genetic marker that exists today. So using radiocarbon dating techniques, the team, they were able to determine when these giant birds had been killed, and it has basically they have to throw out the old paradigm, basically. And this just came out. This is earlier this month of September 2018. So the new study provides evidence of human presence on Madagascar as far back as 10,500 years ago. So this is like right after the Younger Dryas, when supposedly if there was a human population back then that went through the end of the last ice age and the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis event, then this would place the group of people who would be picking up the pieces and trying to repopulate and trying to get their act back together and resume, I guess, society, trying to preserve the human species. So this is the historical context based on the dating that would have happened here. So here's what the lead author, Dr. James Hansford, said. So we already know that Madagascar's megafauna, elephant birds, hippos, giant tortoises, giant lemurs, became extinct less than 1,000 years ago. But there are a number of theories about why this occurred, but the extent of human involvement hasn't been clear. So all these giant animals, they survived the end of the last ice age, whereas in North America, a lot of those megafauna did not survive. I think about 85+% of the animals in North America, and that makes sense because there's an impact. If the impact hypothesis is true, that would have been the epicenter. That would have been where it happened. So anything within the radius of the immediate impact is dead instantly, which is why a lot of Clovis culture is completely gone, mysteriously gone, wiped off the face of the map right away, as well as like the giant North American lion, giant armadillo, a bunch of other animals. He continues, our research provides evidence of human activity in Madagascar more than 6,000 years earlier than previously suspected, which demonstrates that a radically different extinction theory is required to understand the huge biodiversity loss that has occurred on the island. Humans seem to have coexisted with elephant birds and other now extinct species for over 9,000 years, apparently with limited negative impact on biodiversity for most of this period, which offers new insights for conservation today. Okay, so the lead guy himself is saying there needs to be a new extinction theory, because the previous theory was, there was just anthropogenic hunting, that we just out-hunted everything, which is the same thing they said about the woolly mammoth. That doesn't make sense to me now that in light of all this new evidence, because they were coexisting with everything for over 9,000 years. So why hadn't they in that time, they probably were in balance with everything to where it wasn't possible to overhunt anything. The human numbers probably weren't even high enough to even come close. So something else must have happened. Something else must have happened for sure, especially in light of all this. So here's what the co-author, Professor Patricia Wright, says. This new discovery turns our idea of the first human arrivals on its head. We know that at the end of the last ice age, when humans were only using stone tools, there were a group of humans that arrived on Madagascar. We do not know the origin of these people and won't until we find further archaeological evidence, but we know there is no evidence of their genes in modern populations. So the question remains, who were these people? And when, why did they disappear? So they came and went. Very interesting. This kind of reminds me of the Apkallu thing again that Graham Hancock talks about, the sages, the Nephilim, right? The Anunnaki, whatever you want to call it, these enlightened beings who were this colonizing, civilizing force came in. Well, maybe they didn't civilize Madagascar. Who knows? There's no evidence of giant megacities there, but they were there for sure. These people came in. There's no doubt about that right now. And it just reminds me of that story again and again. Just the same narrative over and over. Long time ago, 10,000 years plus around there, something crazy happens, and then people are left to fend for themselves and rebuild. That seems to be what's going on here. The bones of the elephant birds studied in this project were originally found in the Christmas River in south central Madagascar. Yeah, the fossil bone bed that I talked about earlier. And there's a rich concentration of ancient animal remains. So I want to go to the actual article, the scientific article. So here's an interesting nugget of information that the main article kind of leaves out. So they checked the lake sediment cores in Madagascar, and they found out that there was substantial ecological change associated with Madagascar's known late Holocene archaeological period. There's a few reasons why. One, dung fungus called Sporomiella demonstrates a significant loss of endemic megafaunal biomass. So they know there weren't as many megafaunal animals because there's less poop in the record. They see there's this amount of poop, and then after a certain period there's way less. So that means that there weren't as many animals around to poop that much. That makes sense. And then another reason is the expansion of grassland savanna, evidenced by pollen shifts. So these pollen shifts occurred, basically they're filling a new niche. The old, whatever it was that was occupying the grasslands, somehow got destroyed, or something happened to where this savannas, all the pollen were able to colonize that space, and thus the expansion of the savanna. So something must have happened for that to happen. The savannas, grasslands don't just spread randomly. Something had to have happened for that to happen. There's a sharp rise in charcoal microparticulates, so that means something might have been burning. Maybe some sort of climate change event or a cataclysmic event happened, or humans decided to use slash and burn techniques, but that's not true because there's no archaeological evidence for that. So here's some of the evidence. There are coastal rock shelters that provide support for regional human presence from 3000 onward. That's just evidence of people who lived there. But the butchery traces go back even further. They just can't find the homes of the people from back then. So the earliest homes are these rock shelters that they can pinpoint exactly that there were people living there. Doesn't mean that that's when people started living there, though. That's a big distinction. See, bones of Madagascar's extinct megafaunal mammals with butchery cut marks, but lacking any associated artifacts, are also known to predate the widely accepted archaeological settlement period. So there's a settlement period that's widely accepted but has not been challenged, and this is directly challenging it. And then they found small assemblages of tools that are consistent with the morphology of the designs in southern and eastern Africa, and that has dated for greater than 4,000 years before present, so 2000 BC and older. So these two independent lines of evidence suggest a considerably older but poorly understood period of human presence in Madagascar, with important implications for understanding the resilience of the island's fauna to prehistoric human activity. So here's how they got the 10,000 plus year date. They sampled the bone collagen of these giant birds, and they were directly dated at two separate radiocarbon facilities. So we're having two different pieces of technology basically at work here, and methods at work here. And they combined to calibrate a date range of 10,700 to 10,500 years before present. So that's like 8,700 BC to 8,500 BC, around there. So that's like a span of 210 years. And here's the femur, or the leg bone that they measured, and this is 2 meters tall. That's a big bird. That's a giant bird. Jesus. So here's what they reveal: the evidence for anthropogenic perimortem modification, basically human-made butcher marks of directly dated elephant bird bones from multiple taxa and geographical localities, represents the earliest known evidence of human presence in Madagascar, predating all other archaeological evidence by 6,000 years and greatly extending the island's known archaeological period. So the study therefore reveals a previously unrecognized period of human presence and coexistence with now extinct fauna on Madagascar. These findings pose major archaeological and paleontological questions of crucial importance for understanding early human migrations and quaternary faunal extinction dynamics. So basically, this is all a fancy way of saying we have to throw out what we know, that we have to consider all possibilities again, and we barely understand how these extinctions happened. It's not simply people just overhunted and people affected the environment and they all went. Something else must have happened too for them all across the board to go out in the same amount of time. I mean, within the same time frame, they all kind of went extinct. Because if we use the current explanation of why they went extinct, it begs the question, why didn't it happen earlier? Why did it specifically happen about 1,000 years ago? Doesn't make sense. Evidence for long-term coexistence of human and megafauna demonstrates that a radically different extinction paradigm is required to understand biodiversity loss in this island ecosystem. And then I'll have all this linked in the description. This also raises the important question of why, if the island was occupied by prehistoric migrants continually throughout the Holocene, direct archaeological evidence of human settlement predating the late Holocene has not yet been detected. Archaeological research in Madagascar is largely concentrated on relatively recent open-air village sites, and early Holocene sediments have rarely been examined, so it is possible that evidence of older human presence has so far been missed. So all that basically means there's a lot of stuff we haven't combed through yet. It could be even older. There could be an even older presence, probably pre-Ice Age, that we just missed. So new well-described excavations are required to test between these alternative potential hypotheses for prehistoric human colonization and provide further insights into human megafaunal interactions in late Quaternary Madagascar. So there you go, everybody. Because of these giant elephant birds, we now know that there were people in Madagascar way back when, 6,000 years before, like, the evidence that we had before this all came out. So what do you guys think? Do you think radiocarbon dating is BS? Do you think this is just all a mistake in the methodology? Because that's probably the most compelling argument against that I've heard, and it's not even that strong of an argument. But I haven't heard any other alternative. Are we mistaken here? Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for listening and watching, and I'll see you later.